Okay, so today I have an amazing opportunity to talk with a great person called Jonathan Reisman, who is a doctor and author of the book The Unseen Body. Currently, this book has been translated in 7 languages, and many people should read it, in my opinion, because it makes this lyrical, this kind of, it's also knowledge that I forgot that I learned in biology. So I think people should learn about their human body and anatomy. And yeah, so thank you so much for coming to my podcast today, Dr. Jonathan. I
My
appreciate that.
pleasure.
In your book, in intro, you said something that it really hit me in a way. Like you said, you never wanted to be a doctor, but then on the next paragraph, you said you had to figure out something like you are good in mathematics, like analytical problem solver, and you want to do something to work with your hands. And that really resonated with me because that's what I told my parents when I wanted to work in the future. I want to use my hands. And then it's like you follow your curiosity to become a doctor, but initially you didn't want to become a doctor. Like that's just so beautiful, I think, how you could just make your mind by following your intellectual curiosity, make your own pathway. And thanks to that, you also travel a lot, like from Himalayas to Antarctica. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it well, and Nepal and everywhere. And may I ask you, so how all of this traveling have influenced you with your curiosity, but also different culture maybe understand diseases differently? Does this make your diagnosis better today? Like it improve your diagnostic approach or something like that?
Yes, I do think the travel helps me be a better doctor. But I think a doctor can travel to many different places to become better doctor, not only internationally to very exotic places, but even let's say a doctor who works
Mhm.
in a large hospital in a city in the US. They often don't know what goes on, let's say, in a much smaller rural hospital. And I think
Mm.
actually doctors going to the small rural hospital can actually learn a lot about how healthcare is out there in most of our country, or what barriers there are in terms of resources or money or just lack of specialists and other capabilities at small hospitals. I think it can be very eye-opening for doctors to go into any other context to practice medicine in any other place or culture or setting or with fewer resources. It can really
Mhm.
open their eyes to see how great they have it, let's say in that large academic hospital in the city.
Okay.
But it also, I think, helps doctors be more creative, and maybe they don't have access to all the technology they're used to, and they have to find ways to make a diagnosis or
Mhm.
do tests or do treatments, let's say choosing different treatments because the normal ones they're used to are not available. So I think that even just traveling within the same state here in the US and working in a different setting can help a doctor open their eyes to other ways of doing medicine. But the same is true if you travel internationally to places like I went, where the socioeconomic status is very different, or the
Yeah.
access to medications or treatments or diagnostics or technologies very different. And that can open your eyes in a similar way. And I think it does make you a better doctor by giving you perspective and teaching you to
Mhm.
be more resourceful.
That's a very good point because we often, I come from Eastern Europe and I always thought Western medicine is the best in the world. But now I am in Japan and I have traveled around Asia quite often. And I see that they have a little bit different approach and not necessarily the resources that Western have, but still they do the job somehow. And I feel like amazing that they are this creative. And I love this point that you just put. Maybe you don't need all the money in the world to still diagnose a patient, perhaps.
Been to Japan or East Asia, but certainly there are other ways of doing it. And while Western medicine may be among the best or maybe one of the best, I guess the system isn't always set up in the best way. If you're
Hmm.
in the US, if you have money, you will probably get the best healthcare in the world.
Hmm.
If you don't have money, then you might not get it. And that sort of brings up a lot of the problems with medical progress and new medical discoveries,
Mhm.
innovations, yes, if they're not being used to help everybody or even most people, then they're not reaching their full potential. So it's you have to medically innovate. We want new treatments, new technology, but then we want that to be available for as many people as possible.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how USA works, but it looks like there are a lot of middlemen in between that maybe makes also with the insurance a lot of hard time. So maybe if they cut this middleman might be easier. I'm not so sure about that, but it might be a way.
You're right in some ways. There's a lot of middlemen, and I'm not an expert in the healthcare system, but definitely it's very complicated. And I
Hmm.
cannot sometimes pay my patients. I work in an emergency room. Sometimes they ask me, how much does this cost? How much does that cost? I
Oh.
tell them I think they need a CAT scan. They say, how much does that cost? And the answer is always, I do not know how much anything costs. I can't even guess. Even when I am trying to get my own healthcare or for my wife or kids,
Hmm.
it's almost impossible to
Oh
know
wow.
how much something will cost. So it's a
That's
very
interesting.
unusual market and a very unusual industry for
Oh
sure.
wow. Yeah, maybe it will improve, I hope, in the future as well. You put on the book something very funny. I really like that. Once I think what you found on the parking lot some mushroom, and then you were so interested in to dissect it and also see how it goes with the tubes and how it is this living creature in a way. And you make these beautiful analogies in your book, like the outside world and the human body. So it is like a system, but it's also like a parts of each. And I want to know, for example, how all of these parallels have shaped your understanding in human health better. Has the ecosystem or other survival or reaction that they do aligned with our human body as well?
Yeah, so I think I came to a lot of those comparisons because I was just interested in a variety of topics and I guess just naturally connect them in my mind. But before I ever went to medical school, I really was interested in nature and the natural world and learning
Hmm.
the names of all the plants, the names of all the mushrooms and animals, but also understanding their biology, how they live, how they uh, cooperate or work together in the
Yeah.
larger ecosystem. And that understanding of the ecosystem, how different parts fit together to create the whole, and those parts can be competing against each other or they can be acting cooperatively with each other, combination. There are
Hmm.
parasites, there are predators, but there's also cooperation in an ecosystem. And so I brought that understanding, that amateur understanding of the natural world with me when I started in medical school. And it seemed like it's a similar system when I started learning about the human body. You start cutting it apart, just like you might cut apart a mushroom you find in the field, or even a good way to study animals is by looking through their stool, their bowel movements. You can see what they ate and things like that, and learn a little bit about how they live their lives. When you go to nature, you're cutting things up, you're understanding how it works inside, and you're using that understanding to see how things are connected and how they together build that whole ecosystem. And the same goes for when you're cutting open a human body, you're learning about the liver and the heart and the spleen, and then you learn how they work together in health. And then you also, of course, learn how they work together when someone is ill or sick,
Hmm.
or how pathologies can affect one organ but destabilize the whole system, just can happen in the natural world, or
Hmm.
how different organs balance each other. But also, even whenever a doctor, I say, has to think in an ecological way about the human body too, and they naturally do. I don't think most doctors think of it as I am thinking ecologically about the body, but in a way they are always. Because let's say when you prescribe a medicine for someone's high blood pressure, many of those same medicines affect the kidneys, or some
Hmm.
affect the liver. Or when you prescribe a medicine for cholesterol, it can affect the muscles or the liver. And so there's all these different connections between organs. So even if you're, let's say, a specialist in kidneys, a nephrologist,
Hmm.
you have to think about the heart, you have to think about the brain, the blood vessels. So in a way, it's natural for doctors to think about the body as an ecosystem and breaking that down into parts. And that's because that's how everything works in the world. It's a natural outcome of how things are built from parts that work together and create this whole. And therefore, to understand really almost anything, whether you're taking apart some electronics, your smartphone, there's different parts to it. you have to know each part, you have to know how they work together and to create this whole thing. So it's a natural way of understanding any part of the world around us or inside of us, and the human
it,
body
it's
as well.
it's like a natural curiosity as well. Like more you dig deeper, then you can see, oh wait, this cell, I don't know, this arteria, this vein, and you go deeply on it. And maybe you also probably, I don't know, but you can also think, oh, this person is sick, maybe on kidney, but maybe liver is causing this. I don't know. Similar, I don't know how you call those, but maybe neighboring organs, perhaps.
Yeah, I think I call them that in my book, but I would say doctors don't use that term, but yes, they absolutely do. Like one cause of kidney failure is
Hmm.
actually liver failure. When you see the kidneys fail, you should look at the other organ, the liver, to see
Yeah.
if that failure of that other organ might be related. Or heart failure can cause kidney failure. Or kidney failure can cause like a brain failure where you become
Hmm.
delirious and confused. So all the
Wow.
organs are connected in that way. And you're right, like the deeper you go, I think, into any subject, the more you see it connect to other things. For instance, like one of the first traveling I ever did was I lived in Russia for about a
Russia.
year and a
Hmm.
half after college. And I was there to study a very small detail of Russian society, which is the timber industry and how
Hmm.
environmental groups are impacting the Russian timber industry. It seems like such a small detail, but when you get deep into it, you see it connect to everything else about the country, the culture, the history, the geography, the nature, the
Hmm.
religion, the politics. It really connects to
Wow.
everything. Just like you said, the deeper you go, I think the more connections between things.
Yeah, you might also be more upset, I think, like in general, human, when they get more knowledge, like deep knowledge, sometimes it creates some pessimism. I feel like it's good to not know a lot sometimes, not always.
Too
But yeah,
much knowledge can cause paralysis.
for some problems with some
Yeah.
people, maybe.
Yeah.
But let's stay on organs. I love the fact that you are doing this anatomy eats dinners, if I understand correct. Like you do this often, and to show to people how to eat different parts of the body, not human body, but animal body. Let's just be clear on that. And this apparently looks like in USA is not so popular to eat organs, or is it like a new trend or something? Can I have some more of your point on this? How is it going, and how are people eating it? How do they like it, or how do they share this experience?
Yeah, with my friend who's a chef, we created this dinner series called Anatomy Eats, where and I've worked with different chefs now in different cities around the US. We serve dinners where each dish is made with some animal's body part, or we say the word offal in English, which means just like all the other parts of the animal's body besides the meat.
Mhm.
So we serve offal in each dish, and then for each one, I talk about that body part or that organ and explain the anatomy and physiology and explain how the nature and characters of that organ become
Mhm.
sort of part of the food, and how those same organs are working inside of each person there at the dinner, how you're eating this apart from an animal and you have the same part inside your body that's
Yeah.
functioning to keep you alive and healthy. And they're very popular. I think a lot of people are not interested in that kind of food, and those people generally do not buy tickets to our dinners,
Hmm.
of course, so that's useful. But I do think in the past, certainly people ate a lot more of those body parts than they do now, or over the course of the 20th century, as the middle class in the US grew and the food supply changed quite a bit. And people are not killing their own pigs in their backyard for food.
Yeah.
Of course, they're buying more from the grocery store, and they can afford the more preferred parts. And so I think that changed a lot of American food culture and what
Hmm.
kind of body parts people tend to eat. It's a very complicated story, of course, but there is in the last few decades, I think, a little bit of a renaissance, some more interest in those other body parts for health reasons and just for
Hmm.
curiosity reasons. And I do think right now in the US, we're rediscovering a lot of those body parts. And when you go to restaurants in the US now, you see a lot, quite frequently, things like heart or bone marrow on menus. So I do
Hmm.
think people are getting more interested in
Getting more
that,
used to it.
which
Oh
is
yeah.
great.
It's very good. I come from Albania. For us, we have we buy the chickens or ducks in the market, and grandmother or father or mother will just chop the head, and then you have to clean and do all the things by yourself. And so I was very used to it, to this logic. And when I brought my foreign friends in Albania, they were so shocked. They're like, wow, you're murderers. No, I said, this is normal. They were super shocked about it. And we have the specialty. We take the cow's head and we bake it. And
Hmm.
then we fry the brain as well with butter. It's so good. It's the best.
It
But
is delicious.
when they saw it on the face, it's like with the eyes and the tongue and everything is there. They have never been so shocked in their life. And I didn't know how to react as well, because I'm shy that this I love this food, but I'm shy that foreign people don't appreciate. I feel like a village person. um, I'm like, oh man, I don't know if this was a good idea or not. But I
Well, I
think
think, yeah, I think when
organ
people,
consumption is a good way, I think, for many countries, like even Eastern Europe or other countries. Like when you consume different parts of the body, you get different nutrition, perhaps. I really like to see this more coming in the diet of Westerns, actually.
yeah, I think, like you said, those people who you were showing never saw this before. And I think when people don't see this process of killing the animal or
Hmm.
how the living animal gets turned into food, when people don't see this anymore or they don't eat those parts anymore, they can stand back from a distance and say, that's gross, or
Yeah,
that's murder, or how
yeah,
could
that's
you do
murder.
that?
That's the comment we received
Right.
a lot.
Anyone
uh,
making that comment has lived a very sheltered and privileged life living inside of a bubble where they don't
mhm,
see where their food comes from. So it's good to open people's eyes, just like a doctor leaving the city, going to rural America or going to India and treating poor people, as I've done and other doctors have
mhm,
done. In the same way, leaving your bubble and
mhm.
seeing how things really happen in the real world is always very educational.
People are eating like uniform food now. You have the same stuff and you buy meat in supermarket. You don't even buy meat anymore at butcher shops, which I find it a bit crazy, because that's where you should buy it. And you can buy different parts, whichever you want, and nothing goes wasted. But now if you eat the same breast chicken and everybody's eating the same breast chicken, I think this creates like nutrition uniformity, which I'm not specialist, but I think people should try to eat, if they can, of course, like different parts and see all the process. So I love this. Yeah.
I agree. And I think I always say at my Anatomy Eats dinners that yes, it's nutritious to eat the different parts. It's more sustainable to eat these different parts because a lot of these parts will just get thrown in the garbage otherwise.
Mhm.
But also, it's just really fascinating to learn about these body parts and learn about how parts of a living animal become food and how
Yeah.
we have those same parts inside of us. So it's actually, I was fascinated from the time I was dissecting my cadaver in
Mhm.
medical school when I first started cutting open the cadaver to learn all those parts. I became, it's not a place that whets your appetite because in the anatomy lab where you're cutting open the body, but it certainly got me interested in these different parts and how they are used for food, obviously, from
Mhm.
animals, not humans, as you mentioned. So I often say that dissecting a human cadaver in medical school put me on the road to becoming more interested in food and eating these
Mhm.
different body parts.
Wow. I never thought of that. That's a powerful analogy. uh, you traveled to India, I think, and I forgot, what was it, maybe third year of your medical school,
Correct.
and
Yeah. Or after the third year. Yeah.
you were doing maybe some internship, or I'm not so sure what's the term, but you experienced there, you were eating very safe food for a long time,
Hmm.
and then suddenly you went and you drank water from cafeteria, which was tap water, and boom, you got the daily belly. This was probably, I think many foreigners who go to India experience this. And you talked about feces there, and basically about stool, and this is such a taboo topic nowadays. And I think that many people should know about the stool tells a lot about your health. So I think they should see that, and maybe should be more open topic, I think. But something really interesting was that the toilet paper, about the resources. I'm sorry to go back to this conversation, but in India, apparently at that time there was not a toilet paper, but people just use water and soap or whatever they can use. And when you tried this method, you were shocked in a way and maybe, I don't know, afraid or I don't know, ashamed or something. And then you understood how they don't shake hand with the left hand because they use that for that purpose. How was this experience for you in India, and how do you think this culture differences in hygiene can improve our understanding on gastrointestinal health?
Yeah, definitely, again, eye-opening. It was
Hmm.
definitely one of those new experiences that you get when you travel to different cultures, different countries. I guess I came at it from in medical school, you learn to use it's important for your evaluation of the patient. You
Hmm.
do a lot of tests on it to look for certain diseases or causes of disease or to help you make a diagnosis. Feces, it's this in our daily lives, it's this sort of just gross part of being a human that you flush away, you get it away,
Yeah,
you don't look at it, talk
think
about
about
it
it.
too much.
Yeah.
You just get it away and go on with your daily life. It's like on the side and something that you don't pay too much attention to. As where in medicine is a very important part of how you
Hmm.
evaluate health and evaluate disease. So it's useful. And in India, you encounter feces in many ways, actually. One is people use it a lot for their to burn in their cooking fires. So even in the city of Calcutta or
Oh
Mumbai,
wow.
you can see people drying cow feces, cow poop,
Hmm.
on
For
a wall,
energy.
let's
Hmm.
say. Yeah, and then
Wow.
they use it to burn because there's not enough wood
Hmm.
growing everywhere, but there is a lot of cow poop because cows
Hmm.
wander everywhere in India.
Yeah.
And then obviously people use it on farm fields as fertilizer. So thinking about how we use it in medicine led me to think about these other uses for it that I hadn't been as familiar with.
Hmm.
But yes, many people who go to India do experience this. We call it traveler's diarrhea or Delhi
Hmm.
belly. It's a big part of the traveler's experience in India is getting this diarrhea. And travelers end up talking about it quite a bit with each other. And it's reminded me of how in the hospital or in medicine, we talk about it all the time. I talk about it with patients all the time. I ask patients who I just met who are total strangers every detail of
Yeah.
their feces, which is when you first start doing it as a medical student, it feels very strange. And
Hmm.
then you just get used to it. And for me, asking 20 questions to someone about the color and shape, consistency, frequency, everything about it I do it all day, every day. So it's becomes this very normal topic of
Hmm.
conversation, a necessary topic of conversation.
Of course.
And the same is true when you're traveling in India. All travelers are constantly talking about it with each other,
Yeah.
which reminded me so of the sort of hospital environment too.
Hmm.
But and one more aspect that really opens your eyes in India is to learn that one of the most common causes of death for children in India is still just dehydration from diet from
Mm.
infectious diarrhea, which is crazy to think about because it's so rare for that to happen in the US. And
Yeah.
yet it's still a very common cause of death in children, especially under 5 years old in India.
Hmm.
So this sort of like nuisance or not a big problem, easily treated issue in the US becomes this very deadly scourge among the young. So that's another way your eyes can be open when you travel as a doctor also.
That's great information. So basically, many different countries suffer different diseases in a way, and I believe that the economic background also play a role in this. So maybe Western societies have a better infrastructure, and having like access to clean water and good toilets, I think makes a big deal. Whereas in India, perhaps not yet. Uh, I was in India actually last year, no, this year for first time in the south part, and I loved it. It was very developed, and it's like a Silicon Valley where I went there. This is how it's called.
Right. Is that
Amazing.
Bangalore?
Yeah, Bangalore.
Yeah.
It was very developed, and the business was going pretty well. And I saw many cows in the street in the traffic. I was so shocked with that.
Yes.
But yeah, I also try to stay away from the water. And a trick somebody told me is that it's not just the water, it's the ice cubes. So when you order
Right.
coffee, don't take ice cubes. And I was so cautious all the time. I'm like,
Right. And when you
please
take a shower, don't open your mouth.
don't open your mouth. Yes.
I got the same advice. And
Yeah.
India is so interesting, as you mentioned, like parts of the South, if you separate India into states or regions,
Hmm.
Some of those regions, like in the South, are almost equivalent to first world countries in terms
Yeah.
of like socioeconomic stats and maternal and neonatal mortality. And other parts of India are much have much worse statistics. So it's like a very varied country. And I'm sure those diarrheal deaths in children are much more common in the poorer
Mm.
regions of
Yeah,
India.
parallel realities there. And many contrast. You can see a lot of contrast, rich and poor and everything.
Yes.
But yeah, from stool now I'm going to ask you about the diet of fat. Basically, fat now is becoming such a popular topic actually, and you put in your book and you say fat is not your enemy, but it's a hero actually. And when I read that for the first time, I thought, this is not right. How come fat is good? All my life, everybody in my family and remove butter. Please don't eat a lot of red meat and all of these things. And
Hmm.
nowadays we see all of these trends coming by and they're like ketogenic, I think, or what else? Carnivore diet as well. What is your take on these diets, or how much fat should us consume nowadays? Should there be a balance, or should we follow these trends, or anything?
It's a great question. I think my number one piece of advice on nutrition is don't take nutrition advice from a doctor. No, I think the same is true. First of all, nutrition science, the actual
Mhm.
evidence is generally of very low quality. We
Okay.
rate quality of evidence in medicine all the time. And there's ways to study things that are better and ways that are give you just vague answers. And most of the nutritional literature, the nutritional sciences,
Mhm.
is not good quality evidence. So
Oh, wow.
I firmly believe that we don't actually know that much about what is
Mhm.
healthy for us and what is not. But certainly the fat is bad dogma has been very highlighted and very big part of the curriculum and teaching new doctors how to advise their patients from the 50s. We
Mhm.
see that you see this message of eating cholesterol and eating fat is not good for you. I think
Mhm.
today it seems it's a more complicated picture for sure. I think that blanket statement, fat is bad, is certainly ready to be thrown in the garbage. And today the evidence suggests, for instance, that eating cholesterol, like eggs and other cholesterol rich foods, does not raise the cholesterol in your blood. That seems very clear today.
Mhm.
And it seems like maybe some kinds of saturated fats are not good for you, but it really depends on which ones and how much
Mm.
and kind of
The
your
quantity.
overall
Yeah.
lifestyle. I do think when people were eating for a much more active lifestyle in the past, and still
Mhm.
today, people in certain societies live much more active lifestyles than the modern, let's say, American does, or maybe even modern Japanese. But I feel like we still haven't figured out the optimal diet for modern life, these
Yeah.
levels of activity and the way we sit for long times. And I think it's very confusing. I wouldn't say everyone should just go eat as much fat as they want,
Yeah. Of
but I
course.
do think overall it's very complicated. And in general, if you eat a healthy diet, mostly like natural foods, not highly
Mhm.
processed, and you don't eat too much of anything
Yeah.
or everything, then you're probably doing as much as you can to stay healthy.
Yeah, and perhaps maybe training and keeping yourself active might also help. I'm very surprised. I live in Japan and I see people eat a lot of fried food here or eat ramen and gyoza and so on. And somehow they're still skinny. I don't know if it's like skinny fat or what's happening, but I noticed that Tokyo, at least, is such an urban area, is very big, and people walk a lot,
Hmm.
even if they don't want to, because of the train stations are so deep underground. You have to go maybe 5 floors under, and then you have to come back up and walk. And I thought, maybe that's why they are so fit, maybe in Tokyo. And since I came here, I lost a lot of weight just because of this being active. You have to go outside, but things are very far. You need to walk and take a train or a bicycle. And I thought maybe, although their diet is not as healthy as many people might think, of the salary man especially. So we have the salary man, if you know that concept here. So perhaps that might also help people.
Eat a lot of offal, eat a lot of
Waffle?
organs and offal organs
Oh,
like
they
heart,
do. They do.
liver,
We
brain.
we have nabe. It's called, sorry, nabe is a pot, hot pot, especially in winter, and they call it hormone in katakana. But actually, there are whatever inside whatever type organs of the body of an animal body again, please. It looks like I'm talking about human. They also eat, they call it yakitori. They do grilled
Yeah.
chicken, but they do liver and they do hearts of the chicken, and people can buy it in supermarket as well, and they cook it and cook those. I haven't seen brain here, but we have butcher shops here, so
Hmm.
people can buy their meat in cuts how they like it, and they can buy organs as well there. But in supermarket too, it's sold. But I would say that fish is mostly preferred here,
Hmm.
whatever type of fish. And recently, the red meat has becoming popular as well. Wagyu, maybe you have heard of
Yeah.
uh, the cows, and yeah.
Very popular in the US today. Very
Oh, really?
expensive, but
Very.
very popular or talked about quite a lot.
Oh,
One day I would like to come to Japan to try the
please.
yakitori and other things so I can write about or use it for my anatomy eats. I have to
Yeah,
experience different
definitely.
cultures.
Yakitori is something you will love it, I think. They do even the cartilages.
Oh
They don't,
yeah.
yeah, those are very good. They put it three or four of those and they bake it, and it's pretty crunchy. It's very nice.
Is that from a chicken? What is that
It's from a
cartilage from?
chicken.
Okay.
Chicken.
Yes, I would love to try cartilage on a stick.
Yeah, it's pretty good, and it goes very well with the beer. I don't know if you drink beer, but
I
this type
do.
of food is very good. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think on the nutrition topic, as far as I know, it's not clear why, let's say, the Japanese are so
Hmm.
healthy or live
Yeah.
longer. Nowadays, you hear a lot of people saying, oh, you have to eat whole grain rice, whole grain bread, whole grain fiber, this and that. But I think the Japanese mostly just eat white rice. Is that right? So it
Um,
makes me question
most,
these messages like, oh, you should choose brown rice over white rice and brown bread over white bread and olive oil over animal fat. There's all these it's like the commandments coming from the medical field of you should eat this and not that.
it's confusing,
I'm
and I feel
skeptical about
it's
all
very
such
confusing to be honest. Like,
commandments.
who is right? I don't know. Every year, the ideas change in the diet, and I don't follow anymore. I eat whatever I want to eat,
I think
but
that's
with
the right
balance.
approach. Maybe
Uh,
in 50 years they will know something and then we
yeah,
can listen to them. But for now, I say just
yeah.
don't listen.
Eat white rice, enjoy. Yeah, and we have white bread here, although bread is not very consumed here.
Hmm.
Rice is more consumed, but I think there is a variety of many dishes. Like, you will have from the fat from the fish, but you will also have the fiber from the vegetables, and you will also have fermented food. A lot of fermented food
Right.
comes in the table, and I think that helps a little bit, perhaps their health, but I don't know what else might cause this actually, why they live so long, the Japanese.
I don't know either. I'm not sure anyone knows for sure, but it shows. I wonder if some of it is also just cultural acceptance, like of people. Maybe obesity is like less culturally accepted in Japan, or maybe the portions are smaller, or maybe it's the
The
physical.
portions, yes,
Yeah.
portions
Or
are very small here.
maybe eating fattier foods makes you full more quickly, although Americans also eat very fatty food. So I'm not really sure, but
Yeah,
that's why I
perhaps.
think ignore the doctors.
Also, perhaps I think also like less consumption of sugar, I think.
Yeah, I think
um,
that's probably a big
Snacks,
part
for
of it too.
example, I don't see them snacking. At least I have worked in different companies here, and after the break, people don't usually snack. They just eat the lunch and they come back. So probably the that doesn't bring more appetite or increase your sugar level and stuff. So I don't know, maybe it
Right.
helps.
Whenever you walk into a gas station in America, there is a huge selection of
Candy.
snacks that are
Oh,
very crunchy, oily, salty, like Doritos
oh,
and Fritos and potato chips. And I feel
yeah,
like this is the perfect addiction for a human, is something that is salty, oily,
crunchy.
and
And
carbohydrate is just
yeah,
once you start, you're addicted. So it could be that yes, the culture of snacking. We say sometimes mindless eating, where you're just doing
mindless
something
eating.
else and you're just eating whatever it is, not really thinking about it, not a
Yeah.
real
Hmm.
meal. So I do think that goes into it also. But
Okay, yeah, interesting. This culture differences of food in the world. I really like it. But I got it. Anybody should eat whatever they want, basically.
I don't know if I would say that, but
Yeah.
but yes, I think that a lot is not known. And whenever someone says, "Oh, here's the truth about this or that nutrition," I become very skeptical. We call it
Yeah.
a bullshit alarm. The bullshit
A
alarm goes off in
bullshit
my head
alarm.
saying,
I
"Is that
love that.
really true? Is it really true in all cases and
Yeah.
for everybody?" I wonder.
Yeah, that's a good question to ask every time. I love that. I'm going to skip a question here, and I'm just going to go to some issue that I recently I traveled to USA 2 years ago in San Francisco, and I read on your book about the eyes and how you say that how eyes are the most sensitive part, but also you can tell a lot by just seeing a patient's eye, how they're suffering. And it was a case about, I think, addiction.
Hmm.
Somebody was like heroin addicted or something like that, and you gave some drug, I forgot the name, naloxone or
Yeah,
something.
naloxone.
And I saw in San Francisco a lot of homeless people that were on drugs. I don't know what type of drugs, but it looked very bad, the situation there. And I couldn't believe that USA, such a great economy, amazing country, is struggling a lot. And do you think you, as a doctor, there might be something that people can be helped with this addiction in you or San Francisco area particularly?
Yeah, I think we are still struggling with that. I think in recent years in the US, our society and many people have been questioning the way we have done things in the past
Mm,
and thinking about maybe there's a new and better way. For instance,
hmm.
let's say with drugs becoming legal, that's been
Hmm.
a trend in the US. Now, it's not half yet, but almost half of states, marijuana is legal now. It's still illegal on the federal level. But so I think a lot of people looked at our war on drugs, as we call it, and see that it's not working and think maybe we should try a different
Different
path.
approach.
So,
Hmm.
and sometimes those new ideas are or maybe work a little bit and maybe sometimes they're even worse than the old way.
Yeah.
So I think like in a lot of cities like San Francisco, they were saying, let's try it a different way. Let's try not arresting
Hmm.
people doing drugs on the sidewalk or the homeless. Let's try being like having a more gentler approach.
Hmm.
I think we're discovering that those are not perfect solutions either, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
downsides to them. But I think this sort of goes back to also people are questioning a lot of things in healthcare
Hmm.
as well. And they're questioning a lot of the treatments and explanations and ideas that doctors have put forth, like fat is bad for you, don't eat fat, minimum fat
Oh,
in your
okay.
diet. So it's like, I think we're in this period in the US where we're questioning a lot of things that we used to
Hmm.
say. And doctors or patients too, and the public are questioning doctors more than ever. I think the COVID pandemic helped with that too, because a lot of doctors or a lot of the public sort
Hmm.
of saw how the sausage is made, meaning they got a behind the scenes look at how doctors create their evidence and make their recommendations. And in a lot
Mm,
of instances, they were not impressed by our evidence and our proclamations of what is the correct treatment and
results.
what's
Hmm.
incorrect treatment. So there's a lot of skepticism. In some way, that's good. I think being skeptical of something, just saying this is how we've always done it is not a good explanation or a
Okay.
reason that we should continue doing it that way. So, but I do think in terms of like drug use in the US, it is a huge problem. It's always been a
Hmm.
problem, but it's a very big problem nowadays. Partly doctors are to blame, only partly, because we went through a period in earlier in the 21st century where we prescribed a lot of opioid painkillers to
Oh,
people,
yeah.
like way too many, even for mild pain or for chronic pain. And we did get a lot of people addicted. We are doing much less of that nowadays, but the opioid epidemic kind of got started
Hmm.
around that same time and with our help. So certainly doctors being a little more careful in prescribing
Hmm.
their painkillers is a very good idea.
Hmm.
Beyond that, I'm not a social scientist or a politician. I don't know the
Yeah.
correct policy to help
No,
people
no
living on
problem.
the street, but it does seem like just letting them stay there and inject drugs that often have, let's say, there's a very strong opioid, fentanyl, and people are doing
Mm.
heroin and they don't know there's fentanyl in it and they end up having an overdose because the fentanyl is much stronger. And surely this is a huge problem and something the US has to figure out. Like, you can't have an unclean drug supply and just let people use drugs left and right, because a lot of
Hmm.
them will die. And that's happening every year in the US
Yeah,
recently. So there's got to be a better way. I don't know what it is. As an ER doctor, I only get that one perspective of helping
yeah,
people who may be overdosed.
yeah, of course. It's a very big topic actually, and it's not that we are going to find a solution here by just asking it. I always thought about Asia in general. For example, Japan or China, Hong Kong, Singapore has done a very good job with the drugs in general. Somehow, it's a cultural way here of thinking that people don't do drugs
Hmm.
in general, and they are afraid. I think it's also partially with the history of China in Hong Kong with British and opium, if you might have
Hmm.
heard it.
Yeah.
And then they saw that and they had this good idea what happened, and now probably that kind of made people more cautious
Hmm.
about the drug mission. And but it's also the second thing, I think it's safety net in Asia. In USA you can reach the sky, you can be super rich, you can be whatever, but it works both sides. If you are bad, you're gonna reach very deep dark side.
Right.
And in Asia, this is not, I think in Asia you cannot be like super rich and you cannot be like super poor because it's a safety net somehow. Even if you're homeless here in Japan, government will pay you something. And honestly, I have met many homeless people here as well, but somehow they're still like working and doing some stuff, and it's not on drugs and having some healthier life, I would like to say,
Hmm.
as compared to the SF people. So maybe new problem create new solution, I think. So maybe San Francisco as well might learn from that.
I think the US can learn a lot from other countries too. I think in general, we don't like to learn from other countries, but
Oh, interesting.
I think it's part of the American way is to think that we will do it our own way.
Hmm.
And certainly, yes, you can get very rich in America. You can be very poor in America. I do
Yeah.
wonder if some of that sort of the lack of, I feel like that's related in some way to the economic dynamism of the
Hmm.
US and just the fact that entrepreneurs can come here and create something wholly new.
Yeah,
I'm not again, not a social scientist, but it does seem like they're related in some way.
there might be something, yeah. But I hope it gets better, to be honest. I really, USA is my favorite country.
Thank you. Me too.
After Japan, of course. I'm not gonna lie to you. Okay. Is there any country you still want to visit for your next medical approach? Or
I would love to come to East Asia, either
Mhm,
Japan or China or Korea. Probably Japan would be the one I would
mhm.
go to. Yeah, to partly to explore the food, but also it would be very interesting to learn about the healthcare system as well.
That would be amazing. I would love to host you if that would be possible. I can show you around as
You
well.
live in Tokyo?
I live in Tokyo, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I have been living here for 7 years, so I know Tokyo like with closed eyes. I'm not arrogant. I just remember things. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll let you know.
Of course, please do let me know.
Maybe within a few years I would come there.
Yeah, sure. It can be very fun. Just don't come in summer because it's very humid, very hot.
I've
Um,
heard.
yeah,
Yes.
it's like sauna. You walk around, it's like a lot of sweat. Yeah.
I guess there's some parts of Japan that are like the climate is very different. I guess in the north it can be colder and in the south
Yeah.
it's very tropical.
Yeah. Hokkaido is the northern part and it's more chill weather.
Hmm.
Snows a lot. But Okinawa, the southest part, it's a very tropical weather. Always like they only have two seasons, like
Hmm.
summer and spring.
Okay.
But it's always like good weather. Miami, I would say,
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah. It's very
that's
pleasant though.
nice.
It's very nice. Yeah. By the way, do you have more materials to add to the unseen body for your book, or
Um,
you don't want to?
I thought about writing another one to
Hmm.
cover other body parts. Like I never wrote about the pancreas and some other organs,
Hmm.
the spleen. There's many other body parts
Yeah.
to explore, but I think I probably wouldn't write it exactly quite like that again, but I
Hmm.
am thinking about some other books.
Hmm.
So I think my next book will be more about food, like Anatomy Eats.
I would love to do that, to read that.
Yeah, each chapter would be like a different system, like gastrointestinal system, cardiovascular system, endocrine system, and probably each chapter would feature like a
Hmm.
me traveling somewhere to explore that country's cuisine or
Yeah.
interesting body parts that they're using, like
But
cartilage on a stick.
would you be interested, like for example, also to try different type of meat, or you are only religious on pork or beef or chicken?
No, I mean, I have tried other kinds of meat and I would be happy
Hmm.
to. I guess the anatomy eats exploration is more about different body parts,
Hmm.
which could be meat is obviously muscle, but it could be from any animal.
Yeah.
But it's less about it having a meat from an interesting, rare animal
Hmm.
and more just the importance is the anatomy of what you're eating. I'm definitely not opposed to eating different kinds
Interesting.
of meat. I've had
Uh,
a lot of different kinds of meat, and it's always interesting to try something new.
it tastes like chicken. That's what everybody
That's what they
says.
say. Yeah, I've had some bear meat recently, and it does not taste like chicken. It does taste more like beef, I would say. It was
Hmm.
black bear, which lives around
Wow.
here. Like I live in Philadelphia, and in the
Mhm.
northeastern US, there's black bears.
That's amazing. How about you tried whale, I think, as well. How was
Yes,
the fat of how did it taste?
I thought it was great. I tried that in the Alaskan Arctic and some whale hunters there. There's the Inupiat Eskimo people live who are traditional whale
Hmm.
hunters, and they still do a little bit of it, though it's different technology than they used in ancient times. But
Hmm.
they have a dish called muktuk, which is whale fat, whale blubber, and also they serve it where each piece has a little bit of the skin and a little bit of
Hmm.
the fat right under the skin. And I think it's good. I find it quite pleasant to eat. They eat it chilled, but not frozen.
Hmm.
And I think it's not as chewy as you think it'll be. It's quite pleasant to eat. And the taste is like the sea, the smell of the sea
Yeah, yeah.
smells or the ocean smells. It has a taste like that. I think it's great.
Oh, nice. Here in Japan, like now, it's a topic about the whale. They don't want to eat it, and
Hmm.
a lot of foreigners they come and they're against so that. But I haven't tried. But I suspect it might be like the belly fat of tuna,
Uh-huh.
tuna fish, and that one is just so beautiful. It's like buttery. I don't know. It covers your mouth with butter. It's so amazing. I don't know.
It is
I hope
delicious.
I hope you when you come you can try that as well. Yeah,
Yeah, I think whale meat and whale fat are quite delicious. And I know it's a controversial topic
it
there in
is.
Japan.
Yeah. But yeah, I hope turtle too. Like they eat turtle here in
Oh,
some
yeah.
parts.
Turtle I
Yeah,
have never had actually, but
me
I would
too.
gladly try it.
Yeah. It was such a pleasure, Jonathan. Thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate you accepting this for my podcast request. And yeah, I hope to read your next book and hope to see you in Tokyo as well.
Well, it was my
Yeah.
pleasure joining you today. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot and wish you a great day. Bye bye.